He said, okay. She goes, it's okay to tell God that you're tired and that you need out.
Hey, Michelle.
Hey, Garling. Do you want to tell the people who we are?
I always say I sure do, and I hate that I say that. But we are best friends of over 20 years. We went to high school together, and we've both been through our fair share of trauma. So we thought we'd start a podcast and interview people with interesting stories to share.
Yes. What's something interesting about you?
I stumped you this week. I
You
said
did.
our topic should be if you had a talent or a skill, a natural talent or skill that you don't have, what would it be? And mine is that I wish I could sing and
Oh, okay.
sing good,
Yeah,
sing
yeah,
like somebody on TikTok discovers me and I have an album coming out.
yeah. Okay. I like that. Yeah, you stumped me. I don't. Natural skill would be to be coordinated enough to be a dancer or like a fitness coach or something like that.
Oh, interesting. I cannot picture you teaching like a body pump class or like a step class. Like only
Challenge
be
accepted.
like I feel like you would have too much attitude with the stupid people in class.
Oh, probably. Yeah. But I could be known as like the bitchy body pump class person, and then maybe people
Yeah.
would like that.
Yeah. There's an
It would
audience for
motivate
everybody.
them to not be
Yeah.
stupid.
Tell me about your week. It sounds like it went really great.
Does it?
You tell me.
My week was not great. I had sick kids again, and I'm sure our listeners are tired of hearing about it, but let me tell you, I am more tired. My oldest were sick again, and it ended in having to be in urgent care yesterday for 4.5 hours with my 11-year-old who ended up with an ear infection. We tried to go to our doctor earlier in the day at 11 o'clock because they do walk in. I walked in, I'm like, oh, the waiting room is empty. But
Yeah.
their day was already so full that they could not accept any walk ins. And it was like 11
Jesus.
o'clock. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, we'll go home. We'll try Tylenol. We'll try drops. Like I had heard that waiting rooms were like 7+ hours long because everybody's sick. I didn't really want to have to do that on a Saturday when I have 4 children at home that I don't really want to leave at home for that length of time. But Tylenol didn't work, ear drops didn't work, and she was just in so much pain. And I've had ear infections, and I remember just being like 30 with an ear infection and crying because it
Yeah.
hurt so bad. We went to the urgent care. Before we got there, it said the wait was just under 2 hours. When we got there, the wait was 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
While we were waiting, it got up to almost 5 hours. Halfway through, so she had been given Tylenol when we got there and it stopped hurting. And she didn't have a fever. So I was like, okay, maybe it's just an earache. I'll just give you Tylenol if it pops up again. Let's go talk to the nurse and see if we can leave. The nurse was like, she really should be seen. Like, she could have an ear infection and you don't want that to turn into, turn worse.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. So we sat back down. We waited for probably another 2.5 hours. And at 8:30, I was like, okay, by 8:45, if we don't get seen, we got to go. Like, my
Yeah.
kids were at home, they hadn't eaten dinner, like it was just too long to be away. And we get called at 8:35. So we go back there and Julia's like, I don't even think it's going to be anything. And of course he looks in it. He's like, oh no, that's like a super bad ear infection. So I'm like, okay, glad we stayed, but holy cow, that was a lot.
Was it mostly kids in the waiting room?
No, actually, there were some kids, but there were quite a few like adults, older
Yeah.
people, some people who'd come in by ambulance.
Yeah, my boss had to take his kiddo they went to the children's hospital for a
Mm,
similar issue.
mhm.
And I think he said they got there at 6 p.m. and it was 5 a.m. before they were seen by a doctor.
Oh my God.
And he said it was like apocalyptic. Like the whole waiting room
Yeah,
was just
yeah.
full of sick children.
It's crazy right now. I've gotten emails from both of my kids' schools that we have an influenza outbreak and an RSV outbreak
Yeah.
in both of the schools. It's crazy. So she had to take antibiotics. And I asked if we could get the liquid, and he's like, the liquid is really hard to get right now. So can she swallow a pill? So I was like, okay, we'll try to make it work. But she has never successfully swallowed a pill before. I go get the antibiotics last night. I look at them, they're huge.
Yeah.
They look like horse pills. I was like,
And does
how
she
is
have
she
to take
going
them
to do
like three
this?
times a day?
3 times a day. it took her, I just got a text from my friend who has my kids right now, and she finally took her first pill.
What if you cut it into 6 tiny pieces?
It's the capsules, so there's powder
Oh,
on the
it's not.
inside.
Oh, I thought it was like a compressed
No.
pill.
I think now that she's finally got the first one down, I'm hoping that the next ones are more successful. But yeah, other than that, I got really crappy news at work on Friday that led me to crying in my car, driving to a store, picking up 2 cheesecakes, coming home, and having an angry nap.
Like, did you eat
But
the cheesecakes first or after?
both.
Okay, like a pre-nap cheesecake and a
Yeah.
post-nap cheesecake.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that stream of thought.
And not the best week, but how about you?
Well, I think it was fine. It was my birthday last Sunday, and it really
Oh.
dawned on me that it was my first birthday since my dad died. I think we talked about that last week, so I won't bore everybody with more detail. But yeah, it was just, I don't know, just like a humdrum week. We just put
Yeah.
heads down and did the work. I decorated, or I organized my recording space
I know, it
slash
looks
our
so
office.
cute.
And so I got these curtains from somebody off of Facebook. I was gonna say, if
Amazing.
you're listening, thanks. $10 for 4 panels.
Ooh,
And
very
so,
nice.
yeah, I've got curtains on the windows, curtains on our
What is that
janky
picture behind
closet.
your head?
Which
Oh, it's
one?
it's a board, right?
Yeah,
right,
so
right.
then Lindsay's mom, Barb, gave us this like cork board and whiteboard combo. And because what I realized is when we record and videos on, and the background was always just like a bunch of storage boxes. And like,
Yeah.
you know, the office is like the room where you move into a house and you need a space to put things that you don't know where to put them.
Oh, yeah.
We haven't decided yet. Put it in the office. I don't know.
Yeah.
Put it in the office. We'll organize it later. Put it in the. And this is
Yeah.
the smallest room in the house.
Mhm.
And so finally, I was like, okay, we need to organize this. And I painted the walls,
Yeah, it looks so
and
nice.
yeah, I just made it like a little more organized. I still have boxes like all right here, but I'm going through them and getting rid of a bunch of stuff. It's like turning out nice. It's like a nice little project.
Yeah, it's really cute. I like it.
Yeah. And I had the candle you got me for my birthday is blowing,
How does it
and
smell?
it smells really nice. You
I
might
really
even
like
say
it.
it smells like citron pine and balsam.
Oh,
If
I
I
like
had
that.
to
If
name
you had to
a
guess,
yeah, for
it's a
any I know
very
this is not a
good and
visual
specific
medium. I
guess.
just looked at the bottom of the candle. I thought that there was something funny that I wanted to say, but I also have a migraine. I like woke up with a horrible headache. I can't
Mm.
take Advil on an empty stomach, so I took Tylenol and waited to be hungry to eat. Like, I guess I should have just had a piece of bread or something. So then I
Yeah.
like made breakfast, but then at that point my headache was really bad. So then I took Advil and Tylenol,
Okay.
and then I've been like chugging water and coffee, which normally help. But I think the weather, we're supposed to get, it's
Yeah.
supposed to be minus 42 Celsius with the wind chill by
Oh my
Thursday.
God.
Yeah, and the last time I looked outside, it's snowing, it's
It was
cold.
snowing, yeah.
Ooh.
That would probably explain the headache.
Yeah, I think that's what it is, and it's just one
Mhm.
like, am I gonna vomit? Am I not? Stay tuned.
We better wrap this up so you can go lay down or something.
I know, but then I feel lazy. I'm like, I'm just a walking contradiction.
I did have a nap on Wednesday, and then I texted my friend about how much of a piece of crap I felt for napping. And she was like, napping is productive. You need to nap like when your
Yeah.
body needs it. Do not nap shame. So I'm telling you, do not nap shame yourself.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. I won't. No nap
Hashtag no
shaming
nap
here.
shame.
Preach. But we have a
I'm just trying
Patreon.
to, I was going to say, I'm waiting for the segue. How are we going to do this?
I know. Should we do one of our classic? We got a letter in
It was
from
typed
a
and
type.
delivered by a pigeon. It's very bizarre.
Yeah, and it says it's
wow.
from Ken. He's writing in from Montana. And
Oh.
he said, ladies, I can't get enough of you. I want to support the work that you do, and I want to hear more about you. How can this happen?
Well, Ken, who is now the reason that I have a new pet pigeon, you can join our Patreon by going to patreon.com. I did not sign up for this. And if you don't know what a Patreon is, it is a monthly subscription where you can pay us if you really. I mean,
Yeah.
we will allow it. And you get bonus episodes. You get 2 bonus episodes a month. You get instant access to all of our back episodes, which is over 60. Depending on what tier you're in, you will get entered into draws. You can get percentage off our merch. You get a video from our
Yeah.
Wet Wednesday once a
Yeah.
month video where it's audio and video of us just talking about all sorts of things.
And
Truly all
this
sorts
is so this episode comes out. I was just looking at the date. Tomorrow's the 28th, so this comes out on the 29th. And on the 30th, all active patron members, so anybody who was a patron by the 30th, gets entered into a draw for a free reading with a medium named Lisa, who was a guest on our show.
Yes.
And that's like a little bonus. So if you hustle, press pause, go sign up, you get entered into a draw. And then you also, if you sign up this week, we're going to end up delaying it by a week, but we're going to have an episode where we talk about basically what a walking contradiction we are. Like things that drive us crazy, things that irrationally embarrass us. I think it'll be really funny. And then the next week, you get an episode of Wet Wednesday if you're at the 3rd tier called The Ultimate Sufty.
Yes, and that is with our friends, the Common Mystics.
Oh, God, love them.
Who are hilarious and amazing. And we talked about the differences between Canadians and Americans.
Yeah. You know what we should have done before this episode? So this week's episode is with Emily, who owns M's Bakery and Catering in North Carolina. But they are really well known for homemade Pop-Tarts. I don't know the logistics of it, but I think we should have ordered them so that we could talk about them.
Why don't we order them and we could do like a little bonus video about them? Like even just on Instagram or something of us trying them. Now, do you toast your Pop-Tart or do you eat it untoasted?
I'm not a psychopath, so I obviously toast it.
Thank you. And are you more of the fruit Pop-Tart or the chocolatey Pop-Tart?
So I think I'm an equal opportunity Pop-Tartist.
Okay, nice.
But I prefer the toaster strudels that are fruit filled.
Okay.
I think I prefer the Pop-Tarts that have like chocolate.
I am almost strictly a s'mores Pop-Tart person.
Oh, interesting. I didn't even know that you still ate them.
Are you supposed to stop eating them at a certain age? Or
I got a letter from the Pop-Tart company when I turned 18 that said no more.
You're cut off.
Until you find a place that does like homemade Pop-Tarts.
Okay. I disregarded that letter and I do occasionally eat a Pop-Tart.
Like I immediately right now want to go to the store and get both a Pop-Tart and a toaster strudel.
Do it. Or just go to bed because you have a migraine.
I know. I have a terrible headache. So I think in saying that, I hope everybody has a great week.
Me too.
And doesn't have a headache.
Yes.
And doesn't live somewhere that is minus 40 Celsius with the wind chill.
Oh, I'm so upset that you told me about that because I did not look at the weather.
Yeah, it's not great. All right, let's get into this week's episode.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Hello, Emma.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you.
So excited. I messaged you on TikTok and I was so nervous. And you were like, oh, I've actually heard of you. And I fell to the floor and was like, stop it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wait, I've listened to this podcast. That's so cool.
Yeah. Normally I have to sell it and be like, here's who we are. Here's what we do. Hope that they are willing to listen to us. So thank you so much for being on our little podcast. We're so excited.
I'm super excited.
We had a couple of people send us your video. It was one of those put a hand down if you ever. So I got it a few times. I'm like, oh my God, I better watch this.
Yeah.
And your story is incredible.
Yeah. So when I made that video, I was literally sitting in the Food Lion parking lot and I was like, this will be funny because literally no one has gone through this. It's too much. Yeah. And it's barely scraping the surface of what last year was. I left out so much. My mom was like,
my God.
So much.
You're like, yeah, but I can't record a 20-minute TikTok.
I know. I try to tell this whole story. It's going to be like 18 parts. And she goes,
oh my gosh.
palette of what?
That's so funny. Why don't we start with introduce yourself? Tell us like a little bit about who you are, and then we'll find out where your story starts.
Yeah. So my name is Emma, and I am a chef and a mom and a small business owner. And I live in the Raleigh-Durham area of North Carolina. And I own a cafe and a catering company. So catering is our main gig. It's wedding season. So it's been just like up to our eyeballs in wedding. Everyone that couldn't get married during COVID is getting married this year. Been like a fall of celebration, which is really fun. And then the cafe does like pastries and sandwiches and soups. We're best known for our homemade Pop Tarts. They're
Ooh.
yeah, we made this pumpkin cheesecake Pop Tart that is so good. If I don't have them in the fall, people are like, excuse me, where are
That's awesome.
yeah. So I love it. I've worked in kitchens for a long time and having my own is just a dream come true.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
I guess where does your story start?
Gee, I'll start April 28th of 2021. I opened the cafe. A huge dream come true. A big career moment for me. I'm 30. I've opened a restaurant. I can't
Oh my
believe it.
God.
I'm stressed to death. And exactly 1 week later, my then husband came home and he said, gosh, I have a headache. But he had headaches all the time. So I was like, take some Excedrin and go to bed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had just been really busy opening up the cafe and we hadn't really seen much of each other. And so we spent the evening just hanging out. He kept complaining about his head. And I was like, we should just go to bed early. We did. And we were married people that night. And afterwards, he's like, my head hurts worse. And I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
that's weird. You really need to sleep this off. I got him like a hot compress and we went to bed. That was probably like 10:30 at night. I will never forget this. At 4:57, I heard him get up and go use the bathroom. And I know it was 4:57 because I looked at my phone and I was like, it's 4:57. We're still tired of sleep. Like, why is he out of bed? Then he came back into our room and he slammed the door shut. And I thought, that's really weird. He's going to wake up the baby.
Yeah.
And so I said, hey, what's wrong? I was so groggy and he didn't answer. And so then I sat up and I was like, what's wrong? And he turned around and he just fell and started having what looked like a grand mal seizure. So his body was convulsing. The left side of his body was completely stiff and his eyes were rolling back in his head. So before I was even out of bed, I was almost 911. Like
Mhm.
it was very clear something was wrong right away. And we lived in a tiny little community and the fire department and EMS was right at the end of our street.
Oh,
which
amazing.
a huge miracle. And the 911 operator talked me through getting him up onto the bed because his body was so stiff I couldn't get him down onto the floor. He had fallen kind of over the bed, but not all the way on it. And they were concerned about him hitting his head or whatever with a seizure you're supposed to try to get him. So I got him up onto the bed. I ran and I unlocked the door for the paramedics. And then I ran back, still on the phone with the 911 operator. She's saying, like, the fire department's on their way. We're going to help. I remember saying, I don't have any pants on. Okay.
They've seen it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was just having these out of body
Mhm.
shocking thoughts. Like, they're going to wake up the kid. Of course,
Yeah.
kids are coming like lights on, sirens blaring. This is the time to wake up the kids.
Yeah.
They got there in record time. It took them about 6 minutes, I think. Paramedics hooked him up to all of the, I don't know, electrodes. I'm not sure what they're
Yeah.
called.
EKG stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And they gave him a shot to help stop the seizure, and it did absolutely nothing. And then the paramedic said, does he have a heart condition? And I said, nope. And she said, he's having a heart attack. And I was like,
Oh,
no, what are you talking about? He's having
Yeah.
you can see that he's having a seizure.
Yeah.
Like, we got to go. And they got him on a gurney and out the door in 3 minutes, I think was the total amount of time they were in the house. One of the firemen went and got my little boys up and was like, get your shoes on, get in the car. Daddy's a little sick. You need to help mommy. And I had grabbed the baby at some point because I'd heard her fussing. I don't remember when. So I just had her in my arms and was ushered out to my car by the firemen. And they were like, don't speed, but go to the big hospital. And I was like, I'm going to speed.
Yeah.
And sorry, you had all your kids with you?
Yeah. So at the time where we lived was about 45 minutes from the rest of my family and on the other side of town.
Mhm.
So it was like, the kids are coming with me.
Yeah.
Don't have anywhere I can just drop them off. I didn't know my neighbors well enough to be like, knock.
Yeah. Here's my kids.
So I called my mom first and I was like, Mom, Steve's having a heart attack and seizures. You need to come to the hospital. She's dead asleep. She is a planner like me. So her first thought was, today. I signed up for a conference today. I have to go to my conference. I just yelled at her like, that woke my dad up and he was like, we're on it. Whatever it is, we've got it.
Oh,
And so they had started heading to meet me at the hospital and I called his mom and it's 5:04 now, like really early. She sent a voicemail.
Oh,
I was-
no.
I texted her. I said, Cheryl, it is clearly an emergency.
Yeah.
Answer your phone. So she called me back and she's immediately in tears before I can even talk. And I said, it's Steve and we're on our way to the hospital and he's having a heart attack and I don't know what's going on, but I think you need to come. And she said, okay. And then she said, do you want me to wait and see until we have more information? And I just knew. I said, I don't think you should wait. I think you should come, get on a plane this morning. Because even if he's okay, it's going to be a long road to recovery. Heart attacks are serious.
Yeah.
And so she started planning that. I got to the hospital. They pretty much took me back immediately. My parents were there around the same time I was. I handed them my children. I was like, I'll call you later. And when I got back there, he was already down at CT. And the doctor came in and he said, was there a history of stroke? Is there a history of heart attack? Is there blood clotting disorders? All the things. Like, nope, he's been healthy. He's perfectly healthy. I said, last year, he had some headaches. We went and had an MRI. There were a couple little spots on his brain. Nothing to be concerned about. I said, okay. They brought him back up. He's still seizing and like completely unresponsive to any treatment. He doesn't recognize my voice. He's thrashing and it was terrifying to see. You just feel so hopeless and helpless. What am I supposed to do in this situation? I can't.
Yeah.
And the nurses were physically holding him down so he didn't hurt himself. And then an anesthesiologist came in and fully sedated him. And they said, we need to take him back to CT because the one we got was blurry. And I was like, what? And while he was gone, this robot with a TV screen on it rolled into the room. The TV screen lights up and there's a man in it. And he says, hi, my name's Dr. Whatever. I'm from Rutgers. I just got your husband's scans and he is having a stroke. The clot extends from the back of his right ear up to his right eye. It's massive.
whoa.
He's coming back up now. They're going to prep him for surgery and he's going to go. The surgeon is on her way and you're not going to meet her. And I said, okay, what's the
Like the prognosis.
concerns? Yeah, exactly. And he said, if we don't go right now, he will die. And I said, okay, go. At that point, a pastor like materialized beside me.
A very
Yeah.
futuristic hospital.
Yeah.
This man comes up and goes, I'm just going to hang out with you. And I was like, why? Still in the ER and I'm still in an ER like mindset, which is this is all going to take some time and they'll see you when they see you.
Yeah.
There's always a more emergent case. I've never been the more emergent case. So it was all very disarming. And then they brought Steve back in for 2 minutes, long enough to remove his personal possessions. They handed me his ring. Pastor was great. She needs a chance to kiss him and say goodbye. You need to tell him that you love him. And I was like, okay. And I did. And then he was just gone. And I got walked to a waiting room and I was there by myself for about an hour and a half, just sobbing, like full tears streaming down my face. I could not stop crying. And I was rationalizing everything in my head. People have strokes all the time and they recover from strokes all the time. And maybe his face is going to droop a little bit, but I don't care. Maybe he might need to relearn how to talk, but I don't care. It never once entered my mind that he could be paralyzed or die. Not
Right.
once.
Wow.
I just
yeah.
like our life is going to look really different and that's going to be hard. It's going to be fine. People survive all the time. It was just me and then one older man in like his 70s waiting for his wife who was in surgery. I know because I listened on their phone calls. And then I'm sobbing and he's just sitting there with his paper like halfway up over his face, like clearly still looking at me, saying nothing. And I remember thinking, why aren't you asking if I'm okay?
Yeah.
I'm clearly not okay here.
Yeah.
Sitting there. And it was not his responsibility. And he did not know me. It's owe me anything. But I just remember being like mad at this man sitting there. And
Oh,
then
that's funny.
I had called my mom and told her, and my sister-in-law called me and she said, I'm going to come to the hospital and sit with you. And I said, oh, it's okay. You have kids. I don't want you to have to rearrange your day. And she's like, no, this is one where you rearrange your day.
Yeah.
No, okay. And then my mom texted and said she was on her way. And I was like, oh, but your conference. And also, who has my children? And she said, your kids are with your brother. I canceled the conference. This takes priority. And I was like, okay. I still was thinking everyone's overreacting. It's going to be. And she got there and she had everything you can think of in her little tiny duffel bag. She had like blankets and water bottles and ibuprofen and phone shirt.
Aw.
I called it her morbid Mary Poppins bag. She had snacks. Why do you have all this stuff? And also, how does it fit in that bag?
Yeah.
She was like, I've done this a few times. I had his glasses and his phone. And that's,
Yeah.
oh, when he wakes up, he's going to want his phone.
Yeah.
And I deal with stress and trauma through humor. And so I kept trying to crack jokes. And everyone was like, too soon. It's okay to just be in shock. And
Yeah.
it's okay. Okay.
I can
Um,
relate to that. I was cracking jokes because my husband passed away almost 4 years ago. And I was cracking jokes like in the limo on the way to the burial.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to handle anything without humor.
Yeah, I'm the same. So the
Yeah.
doctor had told me when he went to surgery, I said, what happened? Like, how is he having a stroke? And he said he could have had an aneurysm in his brain, like a blood vessel that burst. Sometimes all it takes is like a little hit or a little jolt. And I was like, oh, I'm going to meet death. So I said that to him because I have no bound.
Yeah.
He was good, honey. And also, no.
It's hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So I was trying to cope with humor. Nobody else thought I was as funny as I thought they were.
Yeah.
I got a call halfway through. The doctor, she was amazing. I've been in the workforce for a long time and I've never experienced a woman walking into the room and everyone shutting up and listening to what she had to say. And for
Yeah.
the entire was in the ICU and she would walk in, everyone would defer to her. And
Yeah.
it was really cool to see. But she called and said what had happened was his carotid artery had dissected and was throwing blood into his brain. And she was unable to patch it. And so the only thing she could do was to clamp off the carotid artery, which would mean there would be no blood flow to the right side of his brain, which would leave him permanently paralyzed on the left side of his body in a wheelchair. And it would harm some of his cognitive and emotional function, his ability to filter out sound and light and stimulus. But he would be alive. He would eat. He would be himself, she said, which was not as accurate as I think she hoped it would be. And he would be able to engage in the world around him. And we had just done living wills like a month and a half before. And I knew that he would be okay in a wheelchair, but he would not be okay if he couldn't like feed himself and talk, those kinds of things. And so I said, okay, then we clamp it off and we keep going because we haven't reached a parameter that he would not want yet.
Right.
And so at that point, I knew here's the prognosis we're looking at. Here's our long term. But she was still saying if he survives, 50-50. When he got to the ICU, doctor was like, minute by minute. We're not in hour by hour. We're not in day by day. We're in minute by minute. And it was that way for a long time. It was probably 2.5 weeks before he was to a place where they were saying, like, okay, we're day by day now.
Oh.
He went through everything that could go wrong. His liver shutting down, his kidneys, he had pneumonia, like all the things that can go wrong. And he just survived. He just kept surviving. I got to a point where I was like, he's on all the meds. He's on dialysis. He's on liver enzymes. He's getting full vent. We maxed out. We're not doing one more thing. This is it. If he doesn't survive this, he wasn't meant to. And the doctor said, can you give me 24 hours? I just want to help. I think I can do some more things. Give me 24 hours. And I said, okay. And he didn't leave his side. He stayed with him that whole 24 hours. And he adjusted meds and he adjusted the meds and he just worked and worked. And that was the turning point. He's come out of the coma. He started to speak. He started to recognize what was going on around him. At that point, it became pretty clear he's going to survive. he's not going to thrive. It's going to take a long time before we get to thriving, but he's going to survive. And I was so happy, grateful. I felt really blessed. I knew our life was going to look different, but I was willing to do the work. Like, okay, so daddy's in a wheelchair now. That's what our life looks like. That's just our new normal. The kids came to visit him at the hospital. Obviously, it was still like during the pandemic, so any visits would have to be outside. So they were very hard to coordinate. So we didn't do them very often. But they gave Steve the pet that he needed to get better. And then insurance gets to decide a lot of what your care looks like. And so they needed him to meet certain thresholds once he got to recovery, once he was in the rehab center of recovery, continuing to get better by leaps. It couldn't be little steps. It had to be big leaps every check-in. And so when he started not meeting those thresholds, insurance said, this guy's not going to get better. He's not going to get any better than this. So we're not going to pay. And the doctors fought it and I fought it, and there's nothing you can do. And to keep him in on my own dime would have been hundreds of thousands of dollars
Yeah.
that I don't have.
Yeah.
And if I'm looking back on it honestly, with 2020 vision, he wasn't making great progress and he was not working hard. He was doing the bare minimum, but he'd had a stroke. So you blame it on that, what cognitively is he capable of. So you ideally would have stayed for 6. They kept him for almost 7 weeks. And they transferred him to outpatient therapy, but that instead of it be 3 hours of physical therapy every day, it's an hour of physical therapy twice a week, which when you're in the beginning stages of recovery from a stroke, you need as much therapy as you can get, especially
Yeah.
while all of this was going on. The doctor that had saved his life had said, you should look into genetic testing to figure out why this stroke happened, because he has scarring on every single vessel in his neck. And he has 3 more aneurysms. So 1 on the carotid and 1 on each vena. And she was like, I don't know what it is, but there's 4 options for you. A buffet of terrible.
Yeah.
And so the insurance said, we will cover the genetic testing. If it comes back that and it's curable, then we'll keep paying therapy and we'll also treat whatever genetic conditions come back. And hopefully that will get him into a better place. But when it came back as something called vascular Ehlers-Danlos, and it's a genetic mutation where your body does not create the collagen that holds your arteries and organs together. And so they rupture. So it would traditionally present as heart disease. And so on his dad's side of the family, all of the men have died young of heart disease.
Wow.
In their late 50s or in the 60s. And it was probably, we know now, this condition. But if you just have a heart attack, which looks like a heart attack, then
Right.
they're not going to dig into it further.
Right.
So because it's presented differently as a stroke, it caused them to look into it deeper. And since then, 8 members of his family have tested positive for this. There's only 30,000 confirmed cases in the world. So to have 8 pop up so quickly, Cleveland Clinic was like salivating. They were all over it.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So is it something that can be maintained with like medication?
No, not at this point. So I had the kids tested at the same time because I was like, if he's positive, there's a 50% chance of passing it on with each pregnancy. And they all came back positive. And so we are now under the CARE Act duty. And there's medicines that they can take that will hopefully help, but there is nothing curative and nothing preventative. And there's things we can do. Don't play high impact sports.
Right.
Or keep your blood pressure low, but there's nothing as of now that would be curative. And it's not like people are like, oh, just give them a collagen supplement. Well, their body wouldn't
Right.
know what to do with it. Their
Right.
body would be like, what is that?
Yeah.
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 Let's
don't
just
like
get
that.
rid of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not a simple condition. It's heartbreaking that all 3 of them have it at this age when they're so little. It's
Yeah.
hard to just be like, we can't. Our family doesn't. Guys don't karate. We do swimming, but it will get harder as they get older. It typically starts presenting in your early 20s. So hopefully, I'm just praying that by the time we get there in 20 years, there's medicine's come a long way.
Yeah. And science moves so quickly, or it can. that
Yeah,
there's a really good chance that there is some sort of solution or treatment.
exactly. That's my prayer, is that there's a fix for this in the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow.
So now your husband comes home after 7 weeks.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
A disaster. So we didn't have a ramp. I had to have part of the house completely demoed because the doors weren't wide enough.
Yeah.
We had to get a new shower put in. And I was working this brand new cafe and all these catering clients, keeping 3 kids alive, paying bills, paying all these new medical bills. And so I called his
Oh
best
my God.
and I was like, listen, his best friend was single, lived alone, and worked a job that he didn't love. And
Yeah.
so I will pay you to move in and help
Yeah.
because I cannot do this by myself. And he needs 24/7 care. He very graciously gave up his life and moved in with us and took on our chaos. He was very grounding for me. I needed someone that I could be like, this is bonkers, right? This is bananas.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what level of care did he need?
He was in a wheelchair, but completely immobile on his own. So anytime he needed to be moved, he needed help. He could feed himself, but only if everything was already cut. He could not dress himself or go to the bathroom by himself. He struggled to get around in the wheelchair. So we would move him around where he needed to go. Part of the stroke, when you lose the right side of your brain, you forget that you have a left side of your world. He would forget that the left side existed, and that would scare
Oh.
if you came up on his left side or if there was a noise on his left side, it would scare him and he'd have panic attacks because of it. And so there was a lot of adjusting to the mental disabilities that came with the physical disabilities. Biggest one was the inability to filter out anything. And so the kids would just be kids, making noise, playing
Yeah.
games, having a good time, and it would enrage him. And we were doing our best. We were walking on eggshells. There was a lot of kids play outside. There was a lot of, hey, Steve, you're going to go to an hour in the bedroom quietly, trying our best. And we were talking with his therapist and with the social workers and saying things at home are not going well. Kids are tense. Everything's tense. He's angry all the time. He was very angry at me. He felt like I had kept him alive and that I had him resuscitated. He was certain. And you can say as much as you want that didn't happen. You never
Yeah.
left, but he didn't have the ability to comprehend it. He also had just wanted to be home. And as soon as he got home, he was like, oh, good, I'm done then. And just wanted to sit back and not do anything else. And so that made life really difficult because we would have to be like, you need to do your exercises. You need to be moving. You can go get yourself a drink. You can go get yourself, that book you want. And he would just yell, I'm exhausted. My body hurts. You need to do this. He would
Oh.
throw books at me and spit at us. And Tim took a lot of physical abuse because of just the anger that Steve had stored up in him.
Was he completely a different person before all this happened?
No, I think before he'd had the ability to stop himself from saying the angry and ugly things he was thinking, he had been pretty angry for a long time. Never physically abusive towards me. I want to be very, like, the kids and I were not in a dangerous place before the stroke, but he was very emotionally abusive towards me and financially abusive towards me. I have an entire cafe because he couldn't work enough to provide even something towards the bills. So I was always in a position where I was working more and trying to take on more and more clients.
Yeah.
I am not about that. I love what I do. Looking back, I'm like, oh, I was put in that position. Like, I would have chosen to stay home with my 3-week-old rather than work an event.
Yeah.
That would have been my choice. But the mortgage was due. The tipping point came when I had to work an event one night and the best friend had taken the kids to play outside, but our then 4-year-old had gone back inside to get himself a popsicle. Steve flipped out at him. We don't know why. We don't know what happened, but he was within arm's reach. And so he grabbed the 4-year-old and he really hurt him. By the time the best was able to get back in, he had dislocated his wrist and broken a rib, and he was
Oh,
bruised all up and down his side. And it was 2 minutes. It was not long at all. The Munster had looked inside and been like, whoa, and run in. And so we had already been working on getting him back into inpatient rehab. Insurance had said they would pay for 2 more weeks. And we are like, well, we'll take it better than 0 weeks. Let's go.
yeah.
So the next morning, he was going back into the hospital anyway. But I took the 4-year-old to the pediatrician and I told him what had happened. Said, I'm going to call CPS. I'm not doing this because I think you were negligent in any way, but you need the paperwork. So
Yeah.
you
Right.
don't send this guy home.
Right.
Help me.
Yeah.
And so in that case, CPS was actually really helpful for my family. And I feel like they did the job that they were intended to do, which was putting parameters in place to keep the children safe. And so once they had come in and made a judgment that he just couldn't come back into the home, I already had made up my mind that he wasn't coming back into the home. So I had started looking for facilities that would take him. I looked and looked and looked where I live. I called probably 50 different facilities. Oh, we don't take anyone that young. Oh, we don't take anyone with that disability. We're completely full up and we have a wait list. Sure, but it's $8,000 a month.
Oh my.
I was like, how can I not find? I just need one.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
searching. I was an hour and a half out radius. And I was
Yeah.
like, that's not helpful because I would have to travel an hour and a half. So I called his parents who live in pretty rural Pennsylvania. And I was like, help, please come help me. And they called one facility. It was 7 minutes up the road from them. They had an opening. They would take him for his disability benefit. They could take him as soon as he got done with inpatient rehab, and his parents could come and visit him and take him out, be with him as much as they wanted.
Wow.
And so he was going to get visited more than if
Yeah.
he had stayed near us because I had CPS had put really strict parameters around how the kids could see him and for how long. And so we were limited to about an hour a week.
What was the impact, like emotionally, to your kiddo who was hurt?
I called him my little ball of anger all last year. Everything just set him off. He would go
Yeah.
from angry over nothing, the littlest things. He did not want to leave my side. He didn't want to go to school. He didn't want to go to friends' houses. I enrolled him and his older brother, who had seen everything through the window, in a horse therapy group that deals with trauma and grief. And so that has been immensely helpful. He has a horse that was also hurt by its owner that had been rescued.
Oh,
Clings to this horse. And this horse is
yeah.
massive and he's tiny. He's so good with them. So seeing a little bit of feeling right about a year out now has been really sweet. Because there was a while there that I was like, oh, I lost my Flynn. Like,
Oh, that's so
where he
sad.
is, he's starting to peek back here and there. I
Yeah.
see. And so he does not like to go visit his dad. And I don't push it.
Absolutely.
There's a lot to do. The 2-year-old, she was 1 when all of this happened. So she doesn't really remember a life with her dad at home. So it's really just my oldest that struggled with him being out of the house. He took it the hardest.
Yeah.
And still does. He's really close with his dad. But just because of how everything has unfolded in the last year, his dad hasn't called since probably March. So that relationship has started to deteriorate. I've made an effort. Hey, y'all, he hasn't talked to his kids in 6 weeks. There
Yeah.
needs to be a conversation soon, but that's me initiating it.
Did he know that he hurt his kid? Did he have regret or remorse?
He was not remorseful about it. He kept calling it a spanking. And I was like, we don't spank.
Yeah.
That's not a thing we've ever done.
Yeah.
Why would you do it now? And he kept saying, oh, the kids are treating my best friend like their dad. And I'm just trying to step back into my role as dad. And I was like,
Oh,
your role as dad is never to hurt
Beat
them.
them. Yeah.
yeah.
My God.
That's my
yeah.
role. So there was a lot of just depression and anger. The disability portion of it is so hard because I can't comprehend it because it's not my body. And I know he was dealing with depression, but he wouldn't talk to anyone about it. I know he was angry, but he wouldn't talk to anyone about it. And so it ended up just him lashing out, which just sucked. It was
Yeah.
hard to watch and hard to be the recipient of. I was trying
Yeah.
to face for everyone. Everyone, you can't.
Yeah.
He spit on me this morning before we came here. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even now, just today at church, I had someone, how's your husband? And you can't be like, no, husband.
Yeah.
So I just go with, as well as
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that's like where you get to be like, oh, bless your heart for asking. And then just walk away.
prayers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
So he went to the nursing facility in October of 2021. And we went and visited a few times. We went in November. We went at Christmas for a long visit. That was too long. That's when I realized we don't do long visits. We do 3-day visits at the most. And the visits were terrible. He would just glare at me. And at one point I said, why are you looking at me like that? You're just glaring at me. And he goes, that's just how I look at you now. And I was like,
Oh, God.
so
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah.
I haven't done anything to you.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
And I couldn't figure it out. I was like, I get that he's angry about being in the home, but I didn't have a choice. He hurt my kid. I guess he's just going to be angry at me. I'll just take it.
When he was in the home, was he participating in physical therapy, cognitive therapy, or was he just like refusing?
He was refusing his meds. He was refusing the therapies. He was on his phone 24/7. He had still has a terrible sleeping pattern where he sleeps all day and then is awake all night. And so he had just gotten his body off, which didn't help when the kids were there and wanted to play with daddy during the day. But he just completely would ignore me or just be ugly if he spoke to me. I went with, I don't have to participate in that.
Yeah.
The kids are here to see you, but
Yeah.
I actually am the problem. So I will disengage and be in another room.
Right.
I'm going to make this worse. After Christmas, I went home and I was in the cafe one day. It was a Tuesday. My mom came in. She said, how you doing, kiddo? And I burst into tears. And I was like, oh.
Oh.
I said, I feel like I'm in purgatory. It's so bad. Every time I see him, every time I talk to him, every phone call, every FaceTime, it's so bad. She said, okay. She goes, it's okay to tell God that you're tired and that you need out. And I think we both saw in that moment that it was going to be because Steve was going to pass because he's still physically not well.
Right.
And I just remember praying with her and being like, all right, Lord, I'm exhausted. Show me my way out. I'm going to stay. I'm going to be a faithful wife until I can't be any longer, but you need to show me. And I thought it was going to be till death do us part. So it was Tuesday. On Wednesday morning, I got a text from him. He hadn't texted me in probably a month. And it said, you're going to hear this rumor about a nurse. The nursing home's probably going to call you. It's so middle school. I make one friend and everyone's up in arms about it. Anyway, they removed her from my care. She's not allowed to take care of me anymore because everyone's spreading these rumors. It's so dumb. And I was like, okay. I responded, are you cheating on me? And he said, no, could never. And I said, okay, cool. And I just kind of left it at that. Right. Couldn't stop thinking about it all day. I was like, I have to just call the nurse. I had to find
Yeah.
out. They don't remove a nurse from your care over rumors. Rural Pennsylvania don't
Yeah.
have that many. So I called the facility the next day and I said, I got this text. I would just like some clarification. What's going on? Director said, we can't prove anything, but we think they're contacting each other over Messenger and we think there are shenanigans at night. And I was like, oh, okay. She said, is there any way you can get into his Messenger app? Look, I don't know the password, but I texted him and I said, I need your Facebook login. And he said, okay. And me. So I quickly plugged it in before he could realize what he had done and change his password. And it was just all right there. It was weeks and weeks of messages and very graphic explaining to each other what they wanted to do that night, what they liked about the night before, what their plans, pictures. And then they exclusively referred to me as the B word and the C word. And I was,
Oh my God.
we're done. That level of disrespect. Like I wanted to be like, oh, it's the stroke. It's the stroke. He doesn't know better. But then there were messages saying like over Christmas saying, I'm going to sleep today. So I have some energy for you tonight. Hey. And I was like, well, our kids were there.
Yeah.
You put all day while your kids were there.
For nighttime shenanigans.
And so,
Oh my God.
I called the facility back and I was like, I found it. Here's the screenshot. And they called the police because he is mentally handicapped. And so there was question about whether or not he
Yeah.
was capable of consent. And so the police took his phone and they were able to find not only that he was capable of consent, but he was the instigator of it. All the other women from before.
Oh my.
And then there
God.
were a plethora. And so the officer called me. He goes, "Do you know a Jennifer?" And I was like, "Yeah." What's his old boss? Why? And he was like, "Yeah." Now I'm looking at naked pictures of him. And I was like, "Oh God. Oh no." And it just kept spiraling. "You know an Ashley? You know an Amanda?" Like, okay. And every time I kept, before the other women, I kept being like, "It's the stroke. It's the stroke. I'm not going to divorce him, but I'm not going back either."
Right.
Yeah. And then I was like, "Oh, it's not the stroke. This was a pattern that you developed well before. And as soon as you got a chance after, you were like, let's go." So I'm out. I'm taking my kids and I'm going because
Yeah.
I've killed myself to keep you alive. To watch my kids be stressed out like that and be physically harmed, for me to be treated that way, like it was over the top. I just couldn't do it anymore. And I was like, oh, I got my out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I asked how to get out, and a day later, I got it.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Take it. And anytime I started to be like, maybe not, it was like another thing. Oh, by the
Yeah.
way, the gambling addiction you didn't know about. Oh, by the way, he took out a second mortgage on your home that you didn't know about. Oh, by
No.
it spiraled. Just 2 days ago, I found out about more fraud. So anytime I start to feel like maybe very clear, like you need to go, you need to take
Yeah.
it, go and be safe and be free.
Were you worried about the outside perspective of somebody whose, husband has had a medical issue and now you're leaving them?
Yeah, it was pretty public in my area when the stroke happened because the cafe was so new. It got on the news,
Right.
got up for the whole community rallied behind me, which is really sweet. But it
Yeah.
also gave everyone the impression that they had a right to information.
Yeah.
And so, as really personal, hurtful things were developing, I'm having to fill in the public on,
Yeah.
hey, you're not going to get any more health updates from me because I shouldn't know his health anymore. You'll be out of it. I don't have his best interests at heart.
Yeah.
That was really difficult. And I did go back and forth with not saying anything. Do I just pretend that everything is fine? But there were a lot of reasons why I couldn't do that. The biggest one being people asking, how's your husband? I don't know. Don't know. And also, I don't have one of those. I haven't for 9 years. And I had to be able to make medical decisions for the kids quickly because
Ooh.
thing with them is a medical emergency just by the nature of their disease, a headache.
Yeah.
So I needed to have in writing that I could do that without
Yeah.
having to call and get the second parent's permission. And then also, I just deserve to be free. I know the truth that I worked really hard for this man and that I was willing to do anything for him to keep him in the home and to keep him alive and to keep him safe. And he was unwilling to do those things for himself. And so I can't make him. At one point, he said to me, I got what I wanted when I came home. And so I stopped trying. And I was like, how dare you? Look at these children. They are
Yeah.
terrified to be out. And you're going to stop working. You have work to do.
Yeah.
I'm killing myself. But that was the attitude that he went into it with is I'm disabled now. And so you have to take care of me.
What was his family's reaction? Because his parents must have found out because they were so close.
Yeah. His family's reaction has been mixed. His parents at the very beginning were like, girl, get out of there. His dad said to me, I hope you have the dignity and self-respect to walk away.
Wow.
Wow.
Thank you. I needed to hear that. I'm out. But since then, as custody has become more and more the forefront, it's gotten a little bit more, you left him or you deserted him. So I'm cautious around his family now. I don't see them often. And the kids have been back to Pennsylvania maybe once since then. It's just hard on them to go. Really
Yeah.
hard. And then it's a hard transition back.
Did you have a conversation with him after all of this came out to tell him that you were dead?
Yeah, I did. I asked him. He texted and said, I guess you saw my messages where I was flirting, LOL. And I was
Flirting.
like,
Yeah, a little more than
oh,
that.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, he knows. And so I just asked him point blank, I said, "Did you have sex with this woman?" And he was like, "Nope." And I was like, "Okay, did you have oral sex with this woman?" And he was like, "Yeah, but I never finished, so it doesn't count." And I was like, "Sir."
Oh my God.
I said, "First of all, I don't believe you, and absolutely not." And so we had maybe 3 discussions before it got to a point where I was like, "I can't have these discussions with you anymore. I'm done." When he got served the paperwork, he was like, "I guess I have a year to win you back. Carolina has a 1-year wait rule."
Ew.
And I said, "Oh, don't try. Please don't waste my time, and please don't put me in a position where I have to be constantly rebuffing you for a year. That's not fun for me." I blocked him at that point and made it so if he wanted to call his kids, he had to do it when his parents were there so that there was buffer between. I unblocked him at one point because his parents needed me to get him some information, and I was immediately met with nude pictures of myself that he had taken without my knowledge or consent.
What?
He was like, "I'm just returning these to you because they don't belong to me anymore." And I was like, "They never belonged to you. I didn't know you had taken those, and I would not have been okay with what the heck."
hell?
I know.
My
And
God.
blocked again. I was like, "Whoop."
Yeah.
That's why we blocked.
That's why we block you.
Yeah.
And then his sister was there visiting him at the time. I said, "This is mortifying, but I need you to go through his phone and find any of the explicit pictures of me and delete them because I don't want those on the internet someday."
Yeah. And did she do it? Do you trust
Yeah.
that?
She was like, "Oh, I haven't seen your baby." So I was like,
Yeah. Real good.
thankfully, she has been really supportive and she's watched the kids
Good.
a lot. And she and her husband are stationed nearby. So we see quite a bit of her. But I don't want to take the kids from that family. They're still grandma and grandpa. They're still aunties. I just don't want them around the ugliness. So until that's resolved, I'm just being really careful about it.
Yeah.
And will he likely just live there forever? He'll always be in care?
Yeah, he'll always be in care. He's not in a position where he can come out of care. It's 24/7. He needs help. He gets medicines around the clock. He has to get moved in the middle of the night. And his parents are older. They're not
Yeah.
in a position where they can be physically moving an adult. And his dad has the same genetic condition he does. And so he has to be careful. And his dad, now we know, oh, that's why your kidney ruptured all those years ago. So just working on being careful with him means keeping him in care. And he can come
Yeah.
out. He can go to the church. He can go whatever. He can go to
Right.
dinner, but it's short trips and then back.
So if he would have been able to be in that rehab facility for 6 months like he was supposed to, and if he actually worked and did the things he was supposed to do, would he be in a better position now?
You know, that's the great unknown. The doctors would say yes, that if he had 6 months of full and intense inpatient rehab, he could be walking again. They would say he could be living a completely different life than he is. So much depends on him and also the damage to his brain.
Yeah.
Right. It's kind of his brain does not get blood flow. Was his brain young enough to redirect all of the figures? We don't know. Would have at least been in a position where he would have been safer at home. I had one of the doctors just this past year. I ran into her and she said, "How's he doing?" And I said, "Well, he's in a nursing facility. He got violent with one of our children." And she said, "Oh, there's always a concern that might happen." And I said, "And you sent him home." "Yeah, thanks for telling me." Well, it's sending him home if you thought that might happen or could
Yeah.
happen. And you should have told me. I had a right to that knowledge. So that was infuriating.
And so how do you
Yeah.
not punch stuff? And how do you, when somebody finds out there's like infidelity and they end a marriage, or it's like there's just so much more to it than that. And you got to be the proverbial punching bag of the aftermath of his injury. And then this, like, what a final slap to the face.
Yeah. I think it was helpful that he was in a different state and could not get to me and that I didn't have to share the kid. There wasn't a necessity for me to go and be around him for prolonged time.
Yeah.
That was helpful. And I recognize that as a situation that a lot of single moms are not. The other things are I'm in therapy every week. I got diagnosed with PTSD. And so I take medications for them regularly because I wouldn't survive without them. Being in a good church, I have a really big community around me. I did not know how big my village was, and recognizing that it was my village and not his. They rallied around me. And I have a group of women in my life who I know I can call and be like, Deb, can you pick up my kids today? I can't. And I know that there's someone that's going to bring me a wine and cry on the couch with me. Even last night, I was working an event and just had the passing thought of, oh, I need to text Steve and tell him I'm going to be late tonight. And I was like, oh, I don't do that anymore. And I could turn to my friend immediately and say, gosh, I just thought I should text Steve. And she was like, come here, give me a we hate. So having that, I haven't had real women friendships growing up. That wasn't a thing for me, but to have that now as an adult is really sweet. It's a big part of the reason why I'm upright. And there are days that I am angry and I lash out. I have to apologize to my kids for being short tempered. And there are days that I don't want to make dinner. And I think it's easy to put on a good face because I have to, because I'm the only person that's going to get them to school and I'm the only person that's going to pay the bills. But I try to be honest with them too. I was having a rough day today. They've seen me crying. My 8-year-old will be like, why are you crying? I miss daddy. Why don't you just stay married to daddy? Well, daddy made it so I can't.
Yeah.
And it's okay to be sad. I think just having that outlet of knowing I can be emotional and I can be vulnerable in front of whoever is around me and allowing myself that has been really helpful too. Of just, I'm going to feel what I'm feeling, hopefully in a way that doesn't hurt or distract anyone else.
That's insane. I have no words.
Yeah.
Learned so much about grief this past year and about loss and about hurt. And I think before I had a pretty blasé attitude towards it of just like, everybody goes through hard things.
Right.
And now I'm definitely walking away going, I'm so sorry. Everyone has so much pain. It's all so valid.
Yeah.
And it's like probably such a difficult grief that you feel. My God, my dogs, hang on.
It's my dog has been the same.
And then my kid is like, Mom, there's this many minutes left on your timer. I was like, set another timer.
I locked my door. It's like, I'm just going to lock it. Their friends are here. Black. It'll be fine. They're not even going to notice I'm missing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I was going to say, it's got to be such a weird grief that you go through because you're like grieving the loss of this marriage that you thought you had with this person you thought you knew. And it's like the first layer of grief is that like the grief of them being like healthy and the way you think that life is going to be. And then you're just like knocked down again. And it's like now you're grieving what you thought your life was, but they're still alive.
Yep. I'm having to reconstruct a decade to look back and be like, when he brought me those flowers that night, it was because I was onto something and he was trying to. When he actually said yes to a vacation, it was because I was onto something and he was distracted. It's hard. It's really hard. And to also, you second guess yourself. I'm a smart woman. I'm good at what I do. I'm kind. How could I have gotten myself into a position where I was being treated like this for so long? And then to not see it and then miss him. I miss who I thought he was. So it's just, it messes with your mind. I've had to do a lot of compartmentalizing and just being like, I'm not thinking about that today.
I do that too. I lock things away in my brain. I'm like, we will deal with that another day. Like,
Yeah.
not today.
I put notes in my phone. I'll always be like, I need to unpack this with my therapist. I'm like,
Yeah.
why is it that when I'm up and then I like put it away and I'm like, I'll deal with it in therapy.
Yeah.
Yep. I do that with my kids too. I'm like, they'll bring something to me and they don't want to talk about it, especially the 8-year-old. He'll just mention things off the cuff and then he won't want to dive into it. I'm like, it'd be a great thing to mention to your therapist.
Yes.
I'd love to talk to you about it. Or you could tell your horse.
Yes.
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that. I'm like, great.
Oh, and so it's been about a year that since you've started your business or just over?
I've had the catering business for 5 years. I ran it out of my home, which is not strictly illegal,
Wow.
but it was so small. It was like
Yeah.
for friends and private chef dinners, and then it exploded. So I've had the cafe for a little over a year.
Nice.
Wow. And how is it going?
Great. We are busy every weekend. We're booked up through 2023 and starting to book 2024, which is exciting.
Amazing.
And we just did last weekend, we did our biggest wedding event yet. It was an Indian and American wedding. So it was like days of
Oh,
celebration.
wow. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
And it was really fun. I still have the henna on from it because it was actually for my friends. They were getting married then. So it's been fun to take what I'm one place in my life that I feel confident. Like I know what I'm doing in the kitchen.
To come visit and try one of those Pop-Tarts. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Well, but we just figured out shipping. So we do
Oh,
ship.
cool.
Oh
We're
my
gonna have to
God.
have like taste. We'll do like a tasting, like a
Yeah.
podcast tasting of
That would be
Pop-Tarts.
Probably
Yeah.
flavor.
Thank you so much for taking an afternoon out from your life. You've got kids and a business and a dog and, the whole thing. So I really appreciate it.
So much for having me on. It was so nice to meet you both and see your faces. And it's really cool to put like faces to the podcast.
Totally.
It was so great meeting you.
It's meeting you too. Have a good day.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
you
We'll be in touch
too.
really soon.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks.
Okay,
Bye.
bye. Hey, Michelle.
Hey, Carling.
Thank you so much to today's guest and to everyone for listening.
If you're enjoying this show, there are many ways that you can help our podcast grow.
Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Join us on our Patreon.
Follow us on social media. Check out our merch store.
Share our show with your friends. Download and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
And if you'd like to be a guest on our show, please message us on IG or Facebook.
Have a great week and thank you so much for your support. Bye.
Bye.
Why are they still here?
I don't know. What should we do?
I guess I'll just turn up that outro music.